is a silence within history that speaks louder than noise, not the silence of forgetting, but of formation. Deep beneath the banners of empire, beyond the crowns and conflict, something older than conquest was taking root in the British soil. The patient, often painful, birth of modern democracy. Not from a single proclamation, nor by the force of arms alone, but by a gradual shaping, through trial, revolt, law, and conscience. The world began to learn that power, once hoarded by the few, could be shared. That authority might be held not by accident of blood, but by consent of the governed. And in this long, uneven arc, the British Isles became a quiet midwife to something vast. The idea that freedom is not granted from above, but safeguarded from below. It did not begin perfectly, nor ever proceed purely. But neither did it happen by chance. Centuries before the word democracy found modern usage, the instinct for balanced rule was already being carved into stone, into custom, into the ink of parchment scrolls. In 1215, on a field in Runnymede, a reluctant king affixed his seal to a document not born of generosity, but demanded by resistance. Magna Carta, known as the Great Charter of Freedoms, did not create democracy, but it cracked open the divine right of kings and whispered a new possibility, that no one, not even a sovereign, stands above the law. From that single crack came centuries of careful chiseling. Not a revolution in fire, but a revolution in thought. Parliament grew not from slogans, but from necessity. The need to govern justly, the need to tax with permission, the need to account for decisions made in high places. A slow tension unfolded between monarch and commons, between tradition and reform, until a new balance was struck, not by abolishing the past, but by refining it. The 17th century brought storm and reckoning. A civil war tore the land, and in a moment unmatched in European history, a king was tried by his own people and found guilty not of treason against a throne, but against the nation itself. In that courtroom, the ancient order shuddered. Authority no longer flowed solely from above. It was being wrestled into the hands of those who spoke not for crowns, but for communities. Democracy in Britain never came in a single wave. It arrived as the tide does, slow, persistent, returning always. Through the Reform Acts, through the voices of working men and eventually women, through movements that spanned class and cause, the right to vote widened its circle. It was never easy. There were betrayals and delays. There was blood. But the pattern held toward representation, toward accountability, toward a nation willing to learn from its own descent. And even as the British Empire stretched outward, shaping lands far from its shores, this democratic instinct became one of its most enduring exports, often resisted, often revised, but rarely erased. Parliaments, legal systems, and civil service institutions born of British models took root in lands once colonized. Some would break free and build anew, others would rework what was inherited. But in many corners of the world, the grammar of governance still echoes British formation, imperfect, evolving, yet holding within it the seeds of shared voice. For democracy, in its truest form, is not simply about elections or parliaments. It is the patient belief that people, ordinary people, matter, that decisions should not be imposed but debated. That disagreement is not a threat, but a sign of health. In Britain, this belief was tested in every century, and it remains so today. There are failures, fractures, cynicism, but even these reveal a deeper truth. Democracy is not a finished project. It is a discipline, not a destination. And perhaps that is the gift. Not perfection, but perseverance. Not the claim to moral authority, but the willingness to question it. Britain, the so-called mother of parliaments, did not give the world democracy as one gives a possession, but as one gives a light, passed hand to hand, each holder shaping its form. In village halls and city chambers, in courtrooms and classrooms, in the quiet rituals of voting and petition, the legacy lives not in glory, but in practice. To be British, at its best, has never been to dominate, but to debate. To preserve not power, but the possibility of peaceful change. And in that, a blueprint was offered to the world, not flawless, not fixed, but fertile. From the hills of Yorkshire to the streets of Delhi, from the docks of Liverpool to the Parliament of Canberra, this idea that a people might govern themselves still stirs hearts, still finds voice. In a world where democracy is challenged and contested, it may help to remember where it found one of its strongest roots, not in noise, but in endurance, not in a moment, but in a memory still unfolding